All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Post Game podcast where I'm talking to former athletes making that transition out of sports, figuring out what's next in business, entrepreneurship, and much more. So my guest today is the co-founder of Arena, an AI-powered recruiting platform for the sports and entertainment industry. Prior to co-founding Arena, she spent years working in recruiting at the NFL, NHL, Disney, and Madison Square Garden. Her name is Parul Khosla. So Parul and I actually met at a sports business leaders networking event. So quick plug for the SBL guys doing an awesome job just connecting people in Philadelphia and other cities in the sports world. But she was there for a pitch competition. So she was given a 90-second pitch on what Arena does and how they're helping people. And I thought it was awesome. So reach out to her and asked her to come on the podcast, and she was nice enough to spend some time. So in the conversation, we get into why most job applications disappear into a black hole, how an ATS, applicant tracking system, really filters candidates. And then she gets into their current AI matching platform and shares a little bit of what an upcoming networking tool they're releasing is going to look like, similar to a dating app for professional connections. And lastly, she's building out the company. She's bootstrapping it. She's going out to raise money. So I appreciated her just sharing some of the realities of that. Sometimes I think it can get glorified and put on a pedestal on platforms like LinkedIn and Twitter, but she shares a little bit of what that's really like growing the company. So Parul, thanks again for coming on. This was awesome, and hope you enjoy this conversation as well with Parul Khosla. All right, we're live with Parul Khosla. Parul, thanks for coming on. We're just talking a little bit about how I saw you at the Sports Business Leader meetup recently, and you ended up winning a pitch competition, 60 seconds, 90 seconds. I think it was 90 seconds, but it was so cool. Yes. So I reached out to you, and I'm just excited to share what you're building. And yeah, it's very interesting. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Definitely. Yeah. So a little bit about your background. I know you're a Mets fan. Unfortunately, I'm a Phillies fan here, so won't hold it against you, but you're Mets, Rutgers, you're from Jersey. So maybe if you wouldn't mind just sharing sort of your background in sports, and then how you got to Rutgers, and then what interested you in this sports and entertainment space in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. So I try to share the abridged version because it can be kind of long. So
Yep.
I grew up in New Jersey. Freehold, New Jersey is my hometown, Monmouth County by the shore. Not at all like the TV show, though, which was very controversial for us when that was happening and the Jersey Shore craze. I always was a huge sports fan. I played sports growing up. I played soccer very competitively in my youth. And then I played tennis in high school and a little bit in college as well. And I just loved sports. Like you said, I was a Mets fan. That's my number one team. Baseball is my number one sport. It was the first sport that I like truly fell in love with. And then I took it to a whole nother level of like fandom and love and passion for the game. And so when I first, went to college and everybody's like, what do you want to do with your life? And I'm like, I don't know. And then they're like, well, what are you passionate about? My answer was always just sports. Like I literally haven't done anything else my whole life. I've played sports. I've watched sports. Like I feel like I have no other passions outside of sports. So I was like, sports is my passion. I have no idea how to turn that into a career. I didn't know anything about working in sports when I started college. I didn't know anyone that worked in the industry, never really saw much. Like I think you see more now about the behind the scenes than you did even like 15 years ago or whatever when I was like entering college. So I really like had no idea that sports was like a business and that you can actually work in there. So I was at Rutgers. I was in the business school because I knew that I wanted to do business in some capacity, didn't know what that meant. And then someone in my class just like generally threw out like, oh, what about the sport management program? Like, why isn't that your major? And I was like, what? Like, what is that? Like, I didn't even know that existed. So as soon as I found out, rabbit hole, switched into sport management, immediately started applying for internships, anything that I could find. I was just really like, they really drill into you in the sport management programs that like you have to network and you have to have experience and like otherwise you'll never get jobs. So I took that really to heart and I went and did a whole bunch of internships, as many as I could possibly do. ended up being 6 internships in my undergrad. And then when I graduated, I got my first full-time job at the NFL. It was kind of an assistant, like a generalized assistant position in their football operations department. I did have someone that referred me for that job. It was a job that was never posted publicly. So I kind of like started to like see the inner workings of like how people actually get hired in this industry from even like my first opportunity. It was really from an internship that I did in college that got me this connection that referred me for this role because he knew that my internship was ending and that I was graduating and I needed a job. And that was kind of what started to catapult my whole career. So from there in that role at the NFL, I ended up working primarily on recruiting initiatives specifically for women to get into football, like coaching and scouting positions at all the different NFL teams. It was a crazy like niche position, not one that like really existed anywhere else. But I loved it. Like I loved being the connector for people where there were like all these women that like are actually qualified to be coaches and scouts in the NFL, but there was no in for them. There was no one to like connect the dots. And then I got to be like that person, and I got to actually introduce them to head coaches and owners and GMs and team presidents and actually get them hired initially into internship positions. And then like they can grow from there. And that was crazy. It was a powerful feeling that I've like never felt before, but in a way where like I was so fulfilled by it. So that was when I decided like whatever I do in my career, I always want it to be around helping to connect people to career opportunities that they otherwise would not have had access to. So that role at the NFL was temporary. I had to leave. And so that was when I went into like general HR. I was really interested in learning about just the process behind the scenes of like how someone actually gets a job at one of these types of companies, like what actually happens from the moment that they apply to the moment that they start on their first day. And so I knew I was never going to get that insight unless I worked in an HR department and kind of like learned the groundwork from there. So I did traditional HR recruiting at Disney and then Madison Square Garden and then Minute Media. And then after that, I went to the NHL and I was actually their manager of diversity and inclusion, trying to help create more opportunities for women, people of color, people from just generally like marginalized backgrounds, and help them get jobs within hockey. And so that was an interesting challenge for me. And then about a year and a half into that role, I graduated with my MBA degree. I was going back to Rutgers part-time, taking night classes, getting my MBA over the course of 3 years. And I graduated with a concentration in entrepreneurship and leadership. And that was when I decided that I wanted to start my own business. It was always something that I kind of thought about doing, but didn't know like when was the right time. And I just decided that was the right time. So in June of 2023, I quit my job at the NHL. I initially started a career coaching company called Elevate Sports Talent. And I worked one-on-one with people that wanted to work in sports and helped them get a job. And then in the meantime, I was building the foundation for Arena, which ultimately launched in November of 2024. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, great. Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for some of the background. So you gave some, you said a lot there in your own background, but I'm wondering that the one part you were talking about was how that all works behind the scenes, how companies actually hire. Can you just give a little bit of insight into that, maybe that process? Because I know, what is it? You talk a little bit about an ATS system, and I've read some of your LinkedIn posts how you're not a fan of them. So yeah, I'm just wondering if there's somebody listening maybe that doesn't understand how that works. If you could just explain that a bit.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I love to do. This is why I started doing my own stuff, because I feel like it's when you work for a company, they like don't let you talk about these things, but then that's like 80% of the problem is that nobody talks about it.
Yeah,
so
you don't know. Yeah, you have no idea.
Yeah, exactly. How are you supposed to beat the system if you don't know how the system works? So that's like literally my whole thing that I'm trying to do. But yes, so I can share like some, I mean, that's very complex, so it would take probably forever to go through like all the intricate details, but the ATS, we can start there. That's a good place to start. Every company uses an applicant tracking system for their job postings. So when you go to a company's website and then you go to their careers page, all the jobs that are listed that they have open, those jobs live within an applicant tracking system that usually an HR department hires to facilitate their like whole recruiting process. So when you hear the terms ATS, like that's what it's referring to. Essentially, as a recruiter, you go into the ATS, you put in the job description for the role that you're hiring for, you post it, it gets posted on your website, and then it also gets posted to like the major job boards like LinkedIn and Indeed, and any other like job boards that you partner with. That'll get automatically posted to all of those different channels to help promote that job. And then when someone applies for the job, like that very frustrating process where every time you apply for a job, you have to answer all the same questions over and over again. That is what you're doing within the applicant tracking system. So when you click to apply and you fill out all of your personal details, your education, your experience, you upload your resume, like all of that goes into the ATS software. And then on the back end, that's where the recruiter is able to see who has applied and review all their application questions and then take an action on the candidate from there. Essentially what the ATS does is, or what it's supposed to do, is like help to like organize everyone that has applied for a job and just talent that generally is in your community in any way, shape, or form. So the way that recruiters use their applicant tracking system varies company by company. Some of them don't really use a lot of the features. Some of them use like all of the features that the ATS has to offer. There's like many different ways that you can use the ATS. So I'll also preface with that like you're never going to know like how like the company uses it and like what they're doing on the back end. But the ATS will usually have an option to ask for filters when you're posting a job. So essentially it's like a way to initially screen the candidates that are applying without having to look at their application at all. This is like really highly helpful, especially in this industry, because I will say like as a recruiter, every time you post a job within the first 3 days, that job gets at least 300 applications. Like regardless of what the job is. It could be like an accounting job. It could be like the coolest job on the planet. And like, it'll get so many applications just because like everybody wants to work here. And like so many people, like part of the problem is also that people mass apply for jobs and they'll just like see a job at a company they want to work for and apply for it, even if they're not really qualified or even if it's like not maybe like the right job for them. People are not picky in this job market, so they're like going out and applying for a ton of jobs, and it's making it very overwhelming for recruiters because now you're getting like all these high numbers of jobs. And as a recruiter, your job is not just to review applications. That's like maybe like 15% of your job is to review applications that come in for roles. Like you're also proactively like finding candidates out in the world or in the market. You're also coordinating with the hiring teams and like creating the interview process and then scheduling interviews and actually screening applicants, like having calls with them and extending offers and negotiating offers. And like, there's so many like attending career fairs and like all types of stuff. Like there's so many other things that recruiters do. So it's like to have that much volume on just one role and then times that role by at least like 10 to 20 jobs that every recruiter is hiring for at one given moment. Like it's impossible. You can't actually go through all of those applications within a 40-hour work week. And so it leads to all these other things. So then recruiters will set filters depending on how you answer those questions in your application. You'll get moved to like a good pile or a bad pile. Nobody looks at the bad pile. They'll only look at the good pile, and then they'll like start to filter even more from there. But yeah, that's basically the ATS is like the CRM essentially of just everybody that's ever applied for a job at your company, and then you can like filter and sort through that data from there.
Right. So it makes sense why, if you're not hearing back from a recruiter or from a job, why that ultimately ends up happening.
Right.
So then if you are somebody who's applying for one of those jobs, what's the, and I want to cater this more towards what you guys, because this is the problem you're solving, right? That this is exactly why you founded your company. But I'm just wondering if you are somebody, how do you stand out? And maybe that's what you're helping solve, right? Like, how do you get through that? Yeah. How do you get through all that noise?
Yeah, it's a good question, because there is not like a great way to do it right now, which is why like we're building Arena to help solve that problem. But taking Arena out of the mix for a second, like the best way to, if you're doing the application route, like if you're just applying for the job, the best way to stand out is to position yourself like you're already in that role as you're applying for it, if that makes sense. So like your resume should be like, if somebody was in that role today, like what their resume looks like. So it should be like hyper relevant to the job. I think the mistake that a lot of people make on their resume is they'll have like one version of their resume, or maybe they'll have multiple versions, but it's like too broad. And it's just not specific enough. And like the person that's going to get hired for this job, because there's hundreds to thousands of other people to choose from, like it's going to be the person that checks the most amount of boxes for that job, as far as like what they're looking for and what they say on the job description. So like your resume has to check all of those boxes in some way, shape, or form. And you don't lie on your resume. If you don't check all the boxes, then you should not apply for that job. You like, that's probably not the job for you. But like you have to be like on paper exactly what they're looking for, and then you have to use the words and the phrases that they're using in the job description on your resume, so that they don't have to do any kind of like thinking or guesswork. Like the worst thing you could do is confuse a recruiter when they're looking at your resume. Like if they see anything that's not relevant or not worded exactly the way that it, like in the terms that they use internally, then they're not going to do any like trying to connect the dots themselves, because they have so many people to review. So if they see anything that throws them off, they're just going to go to the next one. So like everything has to be like super, super relevant. And a lot of people don't do that well. And so that's like we talk a lot about that, like tailoring your resume, but still like people are not doing it well enough to like kind of be that standout. But yeah, but that's just like if you're applying. I would also say like outside of just applying for a job, like you should obviously be networking, trying to get referrals, trying to get introductions anywhere that you can, trying to do more like kind of unconventional things. Like you started a podcast, like now you're meeting people in the industry. Like there are things that people can do that are a little bit like maybe time intensive, maybe like a little bit more work, but it can in the long run like get you more opportunities. So things like that definitely need to be done outside of just applying.
Yeah, definitely. Because I feel like it is probably just an education hurdle, because I'll give an example for me. I have a great job. I work for a big insurance company, but I was curious about it. There was a role at John Boy Media. It was a sales role. So I tried to cater my resume as much to that. Like, hey, I have a podcast. I'm not really in media, but I guess technically I'm doing media if I'm putting things out there.
Yeah.
And I just got a canned response back. Hey, sorry. Thanks for applying, but keep an eye out for future type of things. So I guess what you're saying about the networking aspect is definitely important too. And so, yeah, for you, because you're a LinkedIn top voice, which, what does that mean exactly? About that just you have a ton of followers, but
it's basically like LinkedIn's influencer program.
Okay.
So they like, I don't know how, honestly, they're very like gatekept on how they decide who is a top voice, but they'll just like run some sort of algorithm every so often, and like they look at your followers, but more so like how people are engaging with your content. So if you're someone that posts like original content a lot, and that content gets a lot of engagement as far as like likes and comments and stuff like that, like those are the types of people. And then you have like kind of a niche like focus with your content, like those are the types of people that they give out the like top voice badge to. They say, like if you look on their website of like their description, they say it goes to the top 1% of creators on the platform. I don't know. They've been saying that for a while, so I don't know if
Yeah.
it's still like 1% or like how that metric has changed. But and I also don't even really know how I got it, but
Yeah.
that's what it is.
We're gonna clip this section, by the way, and post it on LinkedIn so that you'll be at
Great.
point one.
Yeah,
kidding.
exactly.
Just kidding. But so the reason I was asking that is because is that what you suggest in terms of the networking? I mean, we met at an in-person networking event, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like that's still probably the best way to
Yeah.
do it, but
Yeah.
it's probably the most difficult, really, is
Yeah.
finding those in-person events and meeting people and going up to them and all making sense. But is that what you suggest to people? Is putting yourself out on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
it's a good question. This can pivot well into Arena, but
Yeah, for sure.
The best way to network is in person, I will say. That also I acknowledge is not like an option for everybody. So it's not the most like inclusive and accessible like type of option. But if you live in a city like New York or LA or Chicago or Atlanta, like if you live in a hub where there are like a lot of sports and entertainment companies and like events and like stuff going on, then like you should be actively looking for things like that. It's joining community groups that align with either your like job function or demographics or some sort of something that like aligns with what you're doing. Looking at major tentpole events, like the WNBA All-Star that just happened. Like so many brands and professionals in the industry go to those things, even if they don't work in the WNBA. And then they host things like panels and networking events. And there's just like a lot of opportunities at places like that. So if you are going there for work or you happen to be able to go to those cities where some of those like tentpole events are happening, like around Super Bowl, there's a lot of stuff. Like those are the places to like connect and network with people. And then obviously there's conferences. Industry conferences is also a great one, but some of those are also very expensive. So there's like pros and cons to those as well, in my opinion. And then for us on Arena, we host networking events as well. It's free for people to go because like we don't like when people charge a lot of money for people to be able to go to stuff. But those are the best way to meet someone is in person, obviously. And then the second best is through LinkedIn, probably. However, I will say that LinkedIn's response rate, like the average like response rate for a cold message is 8%. So I will take it with a grain of salt that like you're going to have to message a lot of people in order to get like a small amount of actual responses, which is the problem with LinkedIn in general. Like that's like a whole different conversation, but that it's hard to like cold message someone on LinkedIn and network with them. The way that LinkedIn can be really useful for networking though is if you find someone on LinkedIn that you really want to connect with, and then you look at your mutual connections and you see someone that is a mutual, and then you ask them to introduce you to that person, then it skyrockets. The percentage of actually meeting that person goes like through the roof. So that's how, if you were doing it virtually, I would do it. I would only really kind of reach out to people that I have mutual connections with, and try to get an introduction to someone that way.
Sure. Yeah. Plus, it's tough, especially if on LinkedIn, if you're just messaging somebody and you don't really, not that you have to give to everybody and add value, but it's hard if you're, say you're trying to get into a different industry and you're like, hey, would love to pick your brain. You hear that a lot, or
all the time.
for 15 minutes. People are so busy that they're probably like, I'm just going to ignore this. I don't even know this person. So yeah, it goes back to the warm connections, which is a huge, which is so important. But yeah, so would love to hear about Arena then, because you just somewhat democratized the whole experience. And I think it is important to note though that if you do want to get into a certain industry or meet somebody, that sometimes it might take getting out of your house and actually going. I mean, that there is that barrier to entry, like you're saying, with these events that cost, they're not cheap, $400, $500. So sometimes it might take an extreme like that, but are there other ways? So like Arena, could be another way for you to meet
Yeah.
other people and just get connected. So yeah, we'd love to hear just the background of Arena, how you got started, and then what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. So the ethos of Arena is solely to make access to opportunities more equitable and like transparent. That's kind of like the high level what we're trying to do is like whatever you want to do, like whoever you need to meet for whatever reason, whether it's like job searching or mentorship or you're looking for freelancing stuff or like whatever it is, like we are the place that can connect you to the right people for whatever that like goal is that you're looking for. Arena was started about 2 years ago is like when the idea for it started. It was myself and my co-founder Adrian, who is an industry veteran herself. She actually worked at LinkedIn, like the company, but then she's also worked all over like the sports and entertainment space, like NBA, Clippers, Fox Sports, like a bunch of different companies like that. And she has like a marketing and content background. But aside from that, she was also a career coach, and she has her own career coaching company called Baller Careers for the past 8 years, and she's helped people get jobs in this industry. She's very much passionate about what I've always been passionate about. That's why we have been friends for so long in the industry. Is like we just immediately, once we met each other, like had the same values and everything that we want to see in this industry. So when we kind of were like floating the idea and we were like, this is what we should do this together, kind of like join forces in like a sense. So that was how it started. And then we later brought on Olivia, who is our CTO, who was working at a sports tech startup at the time. And she has been really just the coding behind everything that we're doing. So she built the whole platform and what it is today and what we're growing into. When we first released our platform in November, we started with one product, which is a job matching tool. It's powered by AI and it matches people to jobs and then it matches recruiters to individuals. So this is our way of like streamlining talent identification, primarily for recruiters, because like I said, they're not going through every application. So they're probably missing out on a lot of people that are qualified for the role just because of a volume issue. So what our AI is doing is like making sure that they're meeting people that are qualified for the role and they're not missing those people in the application. So that's how we started. Now it's been about 8, almost 9 months since we've been launched. So now we're looking towards like phase 2, like how are we evolving outside of just job matching? Because job matching is great, but it's like not the end all be all like solution to the problem. Really, like we've been talking about, the actual challenge for people is networking and is actually making those relationships when you don't have like a warm introduction or money to go fly to a conference and stuff like that. So that's kind of what we're doing now with our second product that we're building for Arena. It is a networking matching tool. It's not currently out yet. I don't know when this episode is airing, but it's not currently out yet, but we plan to release it in the fall of 2025. So that is to come if you're listening to this. But essentially, the thought process behind that tool is that like LinkedIn, where LinkedIn falls short is that it's too available. So you have fake people, fake jobs, fake companies like on the platform. And then you also have just like the ability for anyone to message anyone else, and turns into a lot of like sales messages and people trying to like sell stuff to you and people that don't have like the best intentions. And so because of that, a lot of actual professionals won't even look at their LinkedIn messages because they feel like they're just being inundated by like spam. So that's where I feel like LinkedIn doesn't work. So that's where we're trying to create like a better version of that is more curated, obviously specifically to this industry, but also even personalized to you as like an individual person and like what you want to do with your career, and making sure that you're meeting the right people. You don't have to do like all the searching and stuff like that. So how it's going to work is envision like Bumble or Tinder, or like any like dating app. We're using the same core foundation of a dating app and then just making it for professional networking, and adding some more like guardrails to it. So essentially, like you as an individual person come into Arena, you tell us what your goals are. So like I'm looking for a job, or maybe you're not looking for a job, you're looking for a mentor, you're just looking to like grow your network in the industry that you work in. Maybe you're looking for partnerships, or you're looking to do speaking engagements, or like something like that. So like you can tell us very specifically what you're looking for. And then you can also tell us what you can offer. So like, are you willing to mentor younger people? Are you hiring for a job right now at your company? Are you in a position to hire a freelancer or like a contractor, or like something like that? And that those two, like the give and the get, is kind of what goes into play for the matching. And then you can also set preferences as well. So you can say like, I only want to talk to students, or I only want to talk to people at the director level or above. I only want to talk to people in my sector of the industry. So like only people in sports, only people in content specifically. Like you can be hyper specific about who you want to meet, as well as demographics. So you can say like, I only want to talk to other women, or like, I only want to talk to athletes, or I only want to talk to veterans, or like whatever. You can set like preferences on like the types of people that you want to meet. And then that's where the algorithm like uses all that information to make the matches. You get 5 matches every week, and it's a subscription model. So you can pay monthly or annually, but you get 5 matches every single week. And then once you get those 5 matches, you have to take an action. So you have to either approve the match or decline it. If you don't feel like that's someone you want to meet, you can decline it. If you do want to meet them, you approve it. Only when both sides approve it is when the lines of communication are open. And then you can actually engage in a chat with that person, and then you can schedule either a virtual or an in-person meeting with them. We've added in like a gamification, like rewards system into it as well. So the more meetings you have, you can actually unlock things like one-on-ones with high-level industry executives, or like career coaching sessions and stuff like that, which is very cool. And then once you meet with someone, they get added to your connections list, and we actually automate your follow-up with that person. So we tell you like, this is when you should reach back out to them, depending on their relationship to you. And then we craft that outreach for you. So all you have to do is send it. And so it helps you to also like stay engaged with your network and make sure that they're not becoming like disengaged, like more passive members of your like community. So the thought process really is that on Arena, you're meeting only the people that can actually help you, or you can help them. And then everybody in your network, like on your connections list, is someone that you have met before, that you have an actual relationship with. You don't have access to just like freely search everybody on the platform. So we're keeping those guardrails in place for a reason. And then there's also a vetting process as well. So you have to like apply to be a part of this like networking system. And basically that application is just to make sure, one, that you're a real person and you're not like a bot or a fake person. 2, that you're like actually interested in networking, and that you're like agreeing to like do meetings and attend events and stuff like that. And you're not looking to just be like a passive member. And then the 3rd is that you actually have a real intention to work in this industry, and you can prove that in like some sort of way, other than like sometimes people join things and they say they want to do it, but they don't really. So you have to like actually be like interested in like pursuing a career in the space. So those are the things that we're like going to assess as far as the people that are on the platform. So then again, it just makes the quality of the matches much higher. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of layers to that, because I was going to ask you at one point during what you were saying, how do you keep it from becoming a LinkedIn or even a Facebook, you know, something, or people, because people don't need another social media app, right? You don't want to have 1,000 distant connections that you're swiping through and you see their stuff and you're like, oh, I kind of know this person, but don't actually really know them. So you want it to be more personal. So so it sounds like, how do you do that? How do you maintain that then? I mean, I know it says there's a gamification.
Yeah.
Like maybe, how else do you keep people engaged? Like, did they get booted off the platform
or
somehow?
They will get kicked off if they're not like active.
Okay.
Because first of all, you have to pay to use it. This will be a subscription
That's
process. True. So if you're
Yeah.
paying for something and you're not using it, then you probably like shouldn't be here at all in general. But we will have like a code of conduct that we have built out. That's like, if you don't follow these things, then we will kick you off the platform and you will be banned from joining ever again in the future. So like, obviously don't be like weird or like being super solicity and like be like a normal person essentially. But I think the way that we stop it from being LinkedIn is like, one, it's vetted. So we have that application process. We're verifying that everybody's here for the right reasons, at least initially, when we let them into the community. Two is that like you don't have access to everyone that is on the platform. So you can't just be like, I want to sell my services to like 100 people and message them all. Like you can't do that. You can only talk to the people that you have matched with and that have also wanted to match with you. So it's like very like you're in control of who sends you messages and who's reaching out to you and who's talking to you. And then the third way is like it's so hyper personalized. Like imagine if you were on LinkedIn and everybody in your messages folder was like people that were like immediately relevant to your like career and your growth. And then four, I would say too, is like, it's also not a social networking like it's not a social media. It is a networking platform. It's not a social media platform. So like, you're not like creating posts and getting likes and comments and stuff like that. You're just strictly like networking with people.
Gotcha. Yeah. Makes sense. Have you seen Free Agent? It's called Go Free Agent. Are you familiar with that at all? With
not really.
Kirsten Toth. She was actually on this podcast, but she was a former hockey player, and she's starting up something a little bit similar to you, a little bit different, but yes, it's a job platform. I don't know if the use of AI and everything, I don't know about that, but it's a little bit similar, but it's specifically for athletes. So you'll have to connect you with her because you guys are doing something similar. But awesome. So, all right, Parul. Well, listen, we'll start to wrap up here, but I did just want to ask you too, just about from your perspective, the business side of it and entrepreneurship a little bit. Like what have been some of the challenges for you? And then, well, I don't want to make this a double. Yeah. But what are some of the biggest challenges you've experienced so far with this?
Yeah. Oh my God. So many challenges. I think the first is like being a founder. It's like such a huge learning curve. That I almost like, I knew it obviously going into it, but like when you're actually in it, you realize how hard it is. Like when you work for a company, you work in one department, you do like one job. So you're not like learning how to do all the things that go into a business. I can tell you, like, I knew nothing about accounting or finance. I knew nothing about legal. I actually didn't ever work in a marketing department. So even like digital marketing, SEO, email marketing campaigns, like sales, like how do you sell stuff? Like I didn't know any of these things. I never worked in any of those departments. All I knew was how to hire people. So like, that's like my like skill set. But as a founder, you have to do all of the things. And so you have to like learn them all very quickly. Which is really hard. I mean, we have learned it all, but the way that we've learned it is through advisors and like mentors, essentially. So we brought in 6 advisors specifically for Arena. We gave them all equity in the company in exchange for them just advising us really and mentoring us on these different areas like of the business that we're not familiar with. So we have a lawyer, we have multiple like salespeople, we have marketing people, we have finance people, like we have like actually like specific people on our board that have strengths in the areas where we are weaker. So that has been very helpful as far as like learning very quickly, which just is hard in general. The second hardest thing is obviously like financially. Like I'm not going to say that like it's very easy to start a business. We had some money to start with, like that we had saved individually and we each put into the business. We did it all bootstrapped, which like, if you don't know, bootstrapping is like essentially you just pay for everything like for the business until you start making money.
Yourself,
so
right?
Yeah. So we've just been bootstrapping it really like this whole time. We do make a little bit of revenue now on the platform, but it's not enough to cover all of our monthly expenses. So we're still like kind of like in that bootstrapping era until you either make enough money to sustain, or you get investment, which is something that we're doing now. We're raising money from VCs and angel investors and things of the like. But until then, you have to like keep the business afloat. So like that is hard. You're not making any money. I've lost my whole salary. You're like relying on other people or other things to like bring in the money, but it's not comparable to like a full-time salary. You don't have any benefits. Like those are things like really to take into account if you're looking to start your own business. Like that's why people don't do it, or also why people fail quickly and then leave and go back to the workforce, because it like is really hard, and you have to have like a lot of like a good support system, but also like a lot of determination and belief in like what you're doing in order to like keep doing it. Because like it's like sometimes I have like days or like one day I'm like, I hate everything, I'm done, I'm quitting, I'm going back to like full time, and then other days I'm like super motivated. And so it really like it tests you like mentally to be a founder, and like that's not something really to overlook or even like not be transparent about, because I feel like a lot of people didn't tell me exactly how hard it was and like exactly how long you would have to keep doing this until like you were able to like sustain it. Like I don't think I was super aware of all of that beforehand. So I try to be now if I like give other people advice, but those are definitely the two hardest things. I think the third hardest thing is also like fundraising, because I'm kind of like in the middle of that right now. It's really, really hard to like sell a vision of a company that doesn't really exist yet / may never exist in the future, and like sell that vision to people and get them to think that it's worth enough for them to put their money into and like see a return on that investment. Like that's like a very hard thing to do. I've never done it before, so I'm like learning how to do it also for the first time, and it's a very challenging process and also a very humbling process. Like you get rejected a lot. It's literally I equate it to the job search process. Like I feel like I mastered the job search process, and then now I'm like starting from zero in like a different way as a founder, like fundraising. But you have to do like all the same things. You need like warm introductions to investors. They don't respond to like cold outreach. You have to like say all the right things in your like pitch deck, like same as like your resume. You have to tailor it to each company. Like there's an interview process. It's like literally like the same process that you do for like finding a job, but it's also really hard. Probably just as hard as finding a job. Yeah.
Well, you know what? You sold the room at that sports business leaders event. You won that one out of five cool companies.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to talk to you more, and just because I told you before you were recording, it's like this is something that is personal for me too, because I'm doing this. I'm interested in maybe at some point getting into the sports and entertainment world. So
yeah.
So for what it's worth, you sold me in that
Thank
room.
you.
But cool, Parul. Well, thank you for doing this again. It was great meeting you, and I really hope that you're not hope, but I know that you're going to get traction. I think from people who are the fundraising efforts and just VCs. I think that there can definitely be some value in this. So if you could just share where to find you, obviously on LinkedIn you can find you, but just to learn, if you want to learn more about Arena, just share that. What would be great?
Yeah. I mean, me personally, you can find me on LinkedIn. Arena, our website's arenatalent.com. You can sign up for free for the platform today, and then, like I said, the networking stuff that I talked about is coming in the fall. And then you can also follow Arena on LinkedIn as well. We post like a ton of job openings and career advice and stuff like that. And then we also host a lot of events. So if you sign up for our website or you're following our LinkedIn, then you'll hear about our events. We do virtual webinars, and then we also do in-person events all over the country for networking, really, again, to like kind of democratize access to people in this industry. So we'd love to see anyone at one of those.
Yeah, perfect. Maybe you'll see me at one of them too. But
exactly.
I think I think the events are such a big part of it too, because like you're saying, it's the connections, and LinkedIn is great, but actually meeting people in person is invaluable, I think. So it's awesome. All right, Parul. Well, thanks again. This was great. Looking forward to sharing it, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.